I have here 4 examples of a rather unusual or rare conifer. And this, if you come close and look at the foliage, let me test your knowledge. This is a variety of swamp cypress or Taxodium. Now the leaves are very fine, look at it, very, very fine, and it has a particular name. I purchased them from a rare conifer nursery, and that's the name, Taxodium distichum, little twister. Little twister, that's the name of the variety. And because it's a named variety, you can see the bulge here. You can still see where it was grafted. This is the understock. This is the ordinary Taxodium, and that is the grafted portion. So it's grafted there. You can see the V shape. They're all grafted trees, and because they're grafted, they always have a little bulge over there. So that's grafted there. This is grafted there. You can see the swelling there. So this you don't want to grow because this may take over and spoil that tree. So we can take that off. Now this is grafted there. So this is the proper type, true to type, whereas that is not. You can see the difference. That is the natural rootstock, and that is the grafted portion. So these 4 trees are very special and precious to me. Because it's so rare, I want to make them into a nice bonsai. I could easily put them all together and make a forest. Can you imagine if we put them together to form a forest? It would look exquisite, isn't it? Look at it. It would be very, very nice. It would make a beautiful forest like that. But I think it would be a waste to put it together as a forest. I think they're better as individual trees. So this is what goes through my mind. Whenever I'm faced with a situation like this, I've got to ask myself, what is the best thing for each particular tree? So let's analyze each of these trees in turn to see how my mindset works. Okay, so this one, because it's got a bit of a twisty trunk, so I could, again, let me prop it up with a pot. I find these pots very useful because I can change the angle of planting. So if I put it like this, plant it at this angle, I can get that to be the leader. I could get that to be the leader, and I could get a bonsai like this. That could be a pad, that could be a pad. So with virtually no pruning at all, I will have created a very interesting tree. I will wire all these. I may try and take cuttings from this. Usually trees are grafted for a good reason. If you go from a cutting, it'll take very long to develop into a strong tree. But if you graft it, you get results much quicker. So I'm going to just do a bit of wiring and I'll show you the end result. So I don't really need to show you that because it's not rocket science what I'm doing. I'm just going to wire it into this shape and I will show you the end result. So I'm looking at the number 2 tree, the second tree of this Taxodium little twister. Now this has got a completely different habit. It's growing tall like a giant sequoia tree, and it's got lovely taper. This is the understock, which I don't really want, because if I let these grow, it will take over and dominate the tree. And as a result, the top branches may not grow. These young shoots didn't come to anything because we had a very hot summer, so they may have died. So what can I do with this? I can simply make this one tall tree, and simply having it as one tall tree, it is possible, but is it credible as a bonsai? I'm not so sure. So I've got to decide whether to use the complete height or take it up to about here. I think not to be too greedy. If I was making a forest, I would certainly keep it tall. I would certainly keep it tall because it would make quite a nice tall forest like that. But I would probably take it back to there. But I think I can wire these branches down a bit. This I may not need. I don't know whether I will make a gin from that or not. It may not be credible as a gin, so take that off. See, these can certainly be wired like that. The one at the back again, it's a bit thick. I may get inverse taper if I leave it to grow. So let's get that off. Oh, there are a lot of rings here. So just that little diameter, there are about 10 or 12 rings, so fine. So this is a nice front. I'm not sure about that. Let's try a bit of wiring to see the effect. Because I'm going to bend it downwards, I may take a little notch out from underneath. We call it like the armpit. Okay, let's try 3 or 4 mil wire and see if it bends it. I don't often like using very thick wire because it always looks a bit crude, but sometimes needs must. And there's no other way but to use it. It's where the gin pliers come into their own. Very useful tool for bending the ends of wires. So moment of truth, let's see if it will bend the branch down. It's done the trick. That I'm afraid may have died because the summer was very hot. I'm not sure about that. I think we have to bend these two. Certainly bend these two. This can be bent as well. I think this is 4.5 mil wire. I'm going to link it to that thick branch because I'm going to put a double on that one. There are some people who don't like wiring or don't believe in wiring. It would be very difficult to get results if you don't wire. I'm not saying it's impossible, but difficult. Very difficult. See, I brought this right round, so it fill the space here. So that's the reason why I'm doing this. Completely alien to the way it was growing. That branch wanted to go that way, but I'm bringing it back this way. Just to fill this space here. And this can be filled there. Because this tree hasn't got a lot of branches, that's why I'm doing this. Now, because there's a thick branch, I'm going to put a double on this one, and I'm going to link this with this. So the two-branch principle, you see how I'm using the two-branch principle to the full effect. Just trying to configure how to wire this neatly. There's always a way of doing it neat. I'm going to show which branches I'm going to wire so that I can concentrate on the overall design rather than waste too much time. Show you the detail of wiring. These wires will probably stay for a couple of years and then come off. It's just what we call structural wiring to get the shape. So let's return to the front. This is intended to be my front. So the double wiring has certainly done the trick. Huh? I'm not sure whether I want to keep the full height of the tree or not. I think if you keep it too tall, then the trunk looks thin. If I keep it short, the tree will look much thicker. You see the logic? I'm going to cut it here, but I'm going to leave a little stub in case it dies back too far. It'll die back to this point. If I cut it here, it may die back further. So I'm keeping this little stub just as an insurance policy so that should it die back, it'll die back to here. But if I cut it here, it may die back to there. And then I will seal that. And then I'm going to wire these. I'm not going to show you all the wiring. You can see from the back how the overall effect is going to be. I'm going to do the wiring and then show it to you again. So that is this tree done. And I'm not sure about that. That will probably come off. Okay, so that's the second one. Now let's look at some more trees. Now this one obviously was cut at some point, and it's got this very strange shape. And because it's got that strange shape, let's see what we can do with it. Now these are the understock, that's the graft. So these I need to take off in case it takes over the tree. So let's take that out. So let's see if I can get a better angle by planting it at a different angle. Always see if there are other possibilities. I know that you're all dying to say, oh, plant it this way or plant it that way. I'm Just trying to see which is the best way. If we grow it straight, there's not much interest in this part. This is not very interesting. But this is interesting here because it's got a curvy line. So this would be a nice line. If I bring my bag, keep focusing there, and I'll bring a white bag. So whenever you're faced with a problem, the bag trick is very useful. So if I did that, can you see the shape of the tree? Straight away you can see that this bit is not really what we want. That is not what we want. So I can get a very nice tree just by growing it like that. So the line is quite nice like that, just by doing that. But I've got another option. As you know, I'm a crazy guy about making airlings. I hate wasting plants. Now, should I not want to waste this part because it's taken so long to grow, I can air layer this bit, get another tree from this. So because bonsai is a patient game, we don't want to be in a hurry for every single project. I know that with one slice of a saw, I can get it to look instantly nice like that. But why sacrifice this when I can make an air layering? So I'm going to make an air layering here and still plant it as a bonsai at this angle and then train it in a bonsai and also get that. So I'm going to get 2 bites of the cherry, 2 bites at once. So this is what I propose to do with this one. Now let's look at the last one. I've got 4 of these. So this one again is quite interesting. Look at that, beautiful line, beautiful, beautiful line. And because this is above the graft, these can be used as branches. These can certainly be used as branches. And again, if I use the bag trick, let's use the bag trick again. Look at that. A ready-made bonsai straight away, like so. Hardly anything done to it, like so. Now, can I wait another year to airlay this? Okay, I'm going to airlay that one. Probably not. Let's go for a rather quick result. I don't like doing it because it's not in my nature to do that, but I will do it. So here goes. Decision taken. And look at it. I have done hardly anything. One chop and I've got the structure of a really credible bonsai. What have I done? Nothing. Just taken one branch off. And there you are. So this is this Taxodium, Distichum little twister. We will pot it in bonsai training pots and I'll show you the end result of doing that. Okay, so I was in the middle of repotting this. Look at it. It's been growing in this 10-liter pot. I think it's a 10-liter pot. And look at the congested roots. It's been growing in that pot all its life for the last 8 years. And because it's growing in a pot, the roots go round and round. You get what you call a girdling root. And for bonsai, that's not good. So I will bite the bullet and take that off. Because it's autumn, I think it's quite safe to do it now. If you leave it, you will store problems for later on. So let's get rid of it now. I still remember Naka always used to say, if you have a problem, cut it off. But if you cut it off and have a problem, you still have a problem. The problem is a very big problem indeed, you know. So, but hopefully, I'm not going to tease the roots too much. I'm just going to get rid of that. Whatever remnant of roots is left underneath will die off completely. So I've got a better base there. And in time, this seems a bit high. I may have to cut that off, but I won't do that straight away. So there's another ugly root over here, which is coming back on itself. So this is the problem with growing them in these round pots. You have all these complicated problems from the roots going round and round, not knowing where to go. So they come back on themselves, form a tangle, but I still think there's enough root in there to sustain the tree. So I'm not going to tease much, I'm just going to put it in this pot like so. And that is all the potting I'm going to do. And I was just telling our colleagues, look at it, this is just that ordinary garden compost, or for want of a better word, that peat type soil, and the trees grow rampant. They grow so well in this. So all this talk about bonsai compost, sometimes you've got to respect how some of these ordinary gardeners, ordinary nurserymen, they use just ordinary compost and the results are so good. I'm not going to be tempted to cut much more root off. I've just cut the girdling root off. And let us see what happens. A little more. People who are fairly new to bonsai are always tempted to go the whole hog and take a third of the root off, because that's what the books tell them to do, but you don't have to do that. Just take enough to fit the pot. These are all training pots. Because the tree is training, I'm not too bothered about the final look of the tree. I'm more concerned about the health of the tree. I'm just going to cut a little more. I don't want to go too mad, as it were. In fact, I was just looking at, as a leaning style, it might also work. Make the tree lean a little bit, rather than dead straight. I will leave it proud for the time being, because I don't want to take much more root off. I know that it's not the right position for the final display of the tree when it becomes a bonsai, but for the sake of the tree I'm going to just leave it like that. Okay, we'll show you all of them when they're potted up. So let me show you the end result. It is by no means the finished product, because I didn't want to put it in the final bonsai pot just to get the look of a finished bonsai. Bonsai is a long game. So because the roots are very thick and a bit ugly, I didn't want to cut too much off, because if I cut too much off, I could even kill the tree. So I'm being a bit cautious and putting them into oversized pots so that they will establish more roots, and then perhaps next year, in a year's time or 18 months' time, we will look at it again and pot it up properly to sort the roots out. But meanwhile, the main thing is to get the trees to survive. I don't like to mention it, but at many of these public demonstrations, demonstrators are very keen to get the tree complete and to show it as a finished tree. And as a result, they either cut too much root off or put it in too small a pot, and the trees eventually die. What most of you don't realize, that many demonstration trees, I believe quite a few of them, a large percentage, don't make it. They die after demonstrating. So one has to be a bit careful. You also notice that what I'm doing here is I'm just using ordinary garden compost, because this tree has been growing, or all these trees have been growing so well in this ordinary garden compost that I will continue to use this compost because they seem to like it. I'm not so bothered about using a very gritty compost, and certainly not 100% akadama. Many people think that akadama is the bee's knees and it's a cure-all for any and everything. Not so. So this is how this has been potted temporarily, and that is the journey of this tree. Now that tree I put in a Japanese clay training pot because I didn't want to slice the roots off to get it to fit into a rectangular pot. So I put it in a quite generous size Japanese clay training pot, and that is going to be the final shape. Hardly no wiring done at all to it, but you must admit it already looks like a bonsai. So that is that one, second one. Now well, how about the third one? This is the one we decided not to waste the tree, so we've decided to air layer this bit. And this is going to be the angle of planting. I can wire it down like that, and this is going to be the thing. I can easily wire it, but this is how I'm going to grow it. I may put it in a big training pot at this angle, and then when this is rooted, I will cut that off. So this is the next stage for this tree. And this tree, of course, we did put it in a bonsai training pot, but there are many possibilities. This is one possibility to get this line like this, but I looked at it another way, and if I look at it this way, this is also a very nice angle. So it's got two possible fronts. This is a very nice front because the line here is very nice. So without any wiring, you can see that it's already looking like a bonsai and well on its way to becoming a bonsai. So I hope that from this you will learn the many choices and options that I have, but I don't always go for the option to make it a final looking bonsai. I know where I'm going, but I'm not in a rush to do it. So this is the different stages of developing these very rare type of swamp cypress. So you remember the name, it is called the little twister. The variety is Taxodium Distichum little twister. So let's look at these trees and analyze them. If you remember what I said, I wasn't trying to make an instant bonsai. I'm looking to the future. I'm looking to the future because this tree, as it is, doesn't have the taper that I want. It's quite thick. It's over an inch thick. It's about an inch and a half thick at the base, but it goes the same thickness virtually all the way to the top. So ideally, I want a much thicker base here and tapering to the top. So that's going to be the taper. Some of these I may cut off because if I leave too much here, I may get inverse taper forming. So you see I've created movement by creating a movement here, and maybe this can come down even more because this looks a bit odd like that, but it fills that space, creates the triangle. But the main defect of this tree as it stands is that it lacks taper. So this is a tree for the future. So we are not looking at it to look at it as a complete bonsai at this point in time. Now this one also is another tree that I'm looking to the future to become nice. If I wanted to be instant bonsai, I would have cut everything off at that point and made a bonsai like that. See, the proportions are right. If I kept the tree like this, so this would be the complete bonsai. Lovely movement, thick trunk, you see it's well over an inch thick, but I'm keeping this part because I want to have a better taper. If I leave this growing, during next year and that maybe after 2 years, this will become much thicker and it will blend with the rest of the trunk, so I get a better taper creating from there. So that is what I plan to do. If I cut that off, I get an instant bonsai, but I don't want an instant bonsai. I want to look to the future. So the line of this tree is quite nice. Now let's look at the other ones. Now this one, as I said, we air layered the top. So the tree is really over here. The tree is not there. This is the tree. We can do all sorts of things. The taper would be quite nice if I did that. And with few more branches, it would make a very nice tree. But I'm keeping again a lot of foliage here to get a better development to this branch here, which is going to take over as the leader. I'm keeping that back one to help to thicken as well, but eventually that back one will come off as well. So this is how this tree is being formed for the future. So please don't think that these are complete trees. These are not complete trees by any stretch of imagination. Same with this one. Although it's quite thick, it doesn't have the taper that I want, and these trees are a bit ungainly like this. I may get some new shoots coming from here, and if I get thin branches, it may make a better looking sequoia. And this, of course, was developed because this is a very unusual type of metasequoia or swamp cypress. So if I can remind you again, this is Taxodium, Distichum, little twister. So this is the end result, but it is not meant to be complete bonsai at this point in time. But I show you how I approach to making these trees. So maybe in 2, 3, 4 years' time, they will look much better. But I've started the process. So many of you learn not to be impatient, look to the future as well.